A significant discovery is awaiting confirmation by the research team near the Colombian coast. And when the images from a camera nearly 2,000 feet below the surface of the Caribbean Sea are finally returned, the group realizes that they have discovered something unique. Yes, beneath them is a sunken treasure ship that hasn't been seen in 300 years, the holy grail of sunken treasure ships. Welcome to the San José's final resting place. However, a few months earlier, the same team of maritime archaeology consultants and experts from the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute examined the area but found nothing. After all, it's not easy to find shipwrecks from centuries ago. The ocean had also refused to reveal its secrets, despite all of the cutting-edge technology used by scientists at the time. Unfazed, the group then, at that point, planned a second study for November, and luckily, this undertaking ended up being somewhat more fruitful. Yet the scientists weren't the principal treasure trackers to go searching for this specific wreck. In fact, more than 3 decades ago, a different group thought it had located the San José, a Spanish galleon that had sunk in the 18th century and carried a valuable cargo with it. The Sea Search Armada contacted the nation's government in the belief that the San José wreck had sunk off the coast of Colombia. However, after years of legal wrangling, its 1981 request to salvage the site was met with a somewhat unwelcome response from the authorities of the South American nation. This put an end to any further exploration of the area. In fact, because of her location's secrecy, it would be decades before anyone got close to the wreck. After that, a state-sponsored survey of the area was finally approved by the Colombian government, which meant that the galleon and her richest cargo would be seen for the first time in more than 300 years. At a time that is now known as the Age of Discovery, the San José had first set sail. From the outset of the 15th 100 years to the mid-1800s, European nations investigated the world by transport. Countries like Portugal, Britain, and France opened up the world via its oceans out of a need for new trading partners. However, Spain may have started out with the greatest success. After all, Christopher Columbus traveled to the Americas on behalf of the nation when he made his famous journeys there. In addition, historians are aware that the legendary explorer arrived in the area that is now the Bahamas in October 1490, a few months after leaving Andalusia. The Santos fulfilled her mission of transporting taxes and treasures from the New World against this background. Assaults on the Armada weren't uncommon at that point, however, and on one event essentially they were extremely compelling. That time came in June 1708, when the San José was leading the treasure fleet as it traveled from Portobello, Panama, to Cartagena, Colombia, carrying gold, silver, and emeralds. However, a British contingent stepped in just 30 miles from the ship's intended destination, and the ensuing battle ended tragically for both the San José and the Spanish. The conflict that came to be known as Wager's Action lasted for more than 12 hours, and even into the night. Be that as it may, while a large part of the Spanish Armada eventually endured the conflict, the San José didn't. However, the British direct action did not actually cause the ship to sink. All things considered, the financial officer vessel clearly detonated out of the blue before the foe had the option to line. The San José then sank with her entire cargo of precious stones and metals heading for the ocean floor after it exploded. The 600-strong crew was also sent to watery graves, where they remained undisturbed for 300 years, with the exception of 11 members. In any case, albeit the San José's team and freight lay laying on the seabed for a really long time, they were rarely neglected. Endeavors to find the disaster area prevalently portrayed among treasure trackers as the sacred goal of prehistoric studies, and the fortune that she holds have gone on for a really long time as a matter of fact. And in 1981, a gathering of salvagers accepted that they found the Santos as exact area. However, the salvage company Sea Search Armada was unable to descend to search for the lost treasure. Because the wreck was in Colombia's waters, you can see that the organization required authorization to retrieve her, but the request was turned down. Furthermore, from that point onward, the Colombian government made a regulation that basically restricted admittance to the San José and her valuable freight. Years of legal battles over who owned the wreck began as a result of this decision. In fact, between 1989 and 2015, Armada filed 3 separate lawsuits against the. However, in the end, the location was made state property. In addition, the alleged location of San José was strictly kept a secret throughout. However, in 2015, a group of scientists went in search of Santos and her treasure with the Colombians' permission. Nevertheless, they also ran out of time while on mission. Additionally, as a result, not all of the search area was surveyed. Nevertheless, the experts were not discouraged by this setback. In point of fact, the research team returned to those Colombian waters 5 months later. where their determination began to bear fruit. In a press release from 2018, "We got the first indications of the find from side-scan sonar images of the wreck during that expedition," Purcell explained. In addition, these sonar results revealed a debris field, which led the entire team at Woods to believe that they had discovered the San José itself, or, at the very least, another amazing discovery. "We were able to observe strong sonar signal returns," Purcell revealed. "So we sent Remus back down to take a closer look and get pictures with the camera." The submersible eventually came to rest close to the debris field, and the researchers' sentry had to descend nearly 2,000 feet below the surface to get a better view. Additionally, the ship's returned images were simply amazing. Pots, weapons, and even many teacups littered the sea depths. But a group of cannons really caught the eye of the experts. "I just sat there and smiled," Jeff Keeley, an engineer at Woods Hole, told CBS News about the images. He had been distant from everyone else when the photos came in. "I'm not a marine classicist, but rather I understand what a gun resembles," he went on. As a result, the only person on Earth who was aware that we had discovered the shipwreck was me at the time. The Woods Hole team was certain that they had located the San José at this point. However, before they could make a final determination, they needed even more detailed images of the wreck. The group realized that the boat's cannons include complicatedly engraved subtleties. Also certain enough, when Remus 6000 got closer to the disaster area, it took snaps that showed dolphins had been cut into the weapons. When Purcell explained the new images, we were able to see new details in the wreckage, and the resolution was good enough to make out the decorative carving on the cannons. This was all the team needed to prove that they had discovered the site of the long-lost San José. The incredible discovery was confirmed by lead archaeologist Roger Dooley of the Woods Hole team from that point on. Yes, humans had once more seen the San José 3 centuries after the ship had sunk. Be that as it may, while the advancement was proclaimed at that point, insights concerning the wreck's antiquities, and precisely how they'd been found, weren't unveiled until 3 years after the fact. I doubt you can, Wargrave. So while the contentions over the Santos and her abundance proceed, the disaster area herself stays at the lower part of the sea. However, the wealth that Spanish royalty claimed in the 18th century may one day be revealed to us. Finally, we will have a clear picture of the treasure worth $17 billion. In any case, the San José is the main wreck with a disputable story. In the Baltic Sea, a sunken World War II ship is causing controversy for a completely different and somewhat more terrifying reason. A catastrophic environmental catastrophe could result from the wreckage. We're in the Baltic Ocean, a region that is fundamentally a northern station of the Atlantic Sea. Additionally, a terrible legacy of the Second World War is hidden beneath the waves in its frigid waters off the Polish coast. In point of fact, a catastrophe for the environment will undoubtedly ensue if the cargo of this sinking ship ends up leaking into the sea. The vessel that may ultimately cause unavoidable damage to our planet is the Franken, an old German trader transport that had been developed at the Germain-Ure shipyard in the Baltic Ocean port city of Fall. However, despite the fact that the yard was involved in the construction of merchant vessels, like the Franken, it was perhaps best known for the creation of U-boats during World War II. Their shipbuilders completed 84 of these German submarines during the conflict. However, workers at Germain-Ure had not yet completed the Franken when World War II broke out in Europe in 1939. The wartime demand for fighting vessels like U-boats meant that the ship did remain unfinished in the yard until 1942. However, in the same year that the Nazis invaded Denmark in 1940, the Germans moved the Frank into the shipbuilders Burmeister and Wain in Copenhagen, the Danish capital. After completing the Franken II, Burmeister and Wain commissioned her in March 1943. She began her career in the Baltic Sea as a tanker and supply ship supporting ships like the heavy cruiser Prinz Eugen of the German Navy. She also carried fuel and other supplies to various minesweepers, torpedo boats, and patrol boats in the later stages of the war. More specifically, the Germans built 5 of the Franken, which are part of the Death Martian tanker and supply ship class, is now back in the public eye as a result of her cargo, and we'll see why in a moment. The ship is currently about 160 to 240 feet below the Baltic Sea surface. The bow is separated from the rest of the vessel by approximately 2,600 feet, and the structure of the wreck is also far from stable. The hull is also split in two. However, Poland's Littoral and the Eimer sailed to the waters above the sunken wreck in April 2018, after Germany's Baltic Sea Conservation Foundation agreed to fund the investigation. After that, the ship's divers spent roughly 13 hours getting to know the wreckage and evaluating it. Additionally, the divers discovered enough to raise serious concerns regarding the shipwreck's future condition. When she spoke to The Sun in 2018, the oldest Sarna president of the Marine Conservation Organization, known as the Mare Foundation, certainly implied that. She responded that it appeared increasingly likely, given that we know that the wreck steel is getting worse by the day, when asked about the dangers of the Franken's hull collapsing and breaking apart. Also, the ship is clearly deteriorating, so the only question is when she will break. As Sarno explained, the wreck is positioned between two dunes on the bottom of the sea, and the current constantly washes over it. Therefore, Sarna continued, it will enter the space between the dunes when the steel can no longer withstand the chips. Additionally, there is a compelling explanation for the Franken's hull's almost certain demise. You see, the salt water in which the strait to the point and lies is gradually eroding the steel external opening, as well as the stockpiling tanks inside the boat. Consequently, the tank's metal thickness is decreasing at a rate of approximately 0.39 inches at regular intervals. Even though that doesn't sound like much, keep in mind that this ship has been anchored in the Baltic Sea since 1945. The steel in the Franken's tanks is now more than a quarter of an inch thinner than it was on the day it was first put to sea after nearly 75 years on the ocean floor. Keep in mind that the total thickness of the metal when the vessel was brand new was a little less than half an inch. And looking at those facts, it's easy to see how this gradual erosion will eventually come to an end. After close the entire region for basically several years. Indeed, a 2-year beach closure could have a significant negative economic impact on the region, which has a thriving tourism industry. In fact, the cost in terms of economic loss could easily reach the millions. But it's not just about money. It is important to take into consideration the potential severe effects on wildlife and the natural environment. Additionally, Sarna has talked about the possibility of terrible habitat damage along Poland's Baltic coast. If the oil gets there, the local population will include seal and bird protected colonies. Thus, the ecological impact will be extremely significant. Despite the fact that the Polish authorities have no obligation to prevent such a disaster, she provided an alarming explanation. The law does not obligate the government to prevent the oil spill at this time, as Sarna pointed out. They are obliged exclusively to act right now that spill occurs. However, by that time, it may be too late to stop the worst effects of the leak's labor, and discomfort concerns are based on much more than just speculative speculation. You see, the fate of another World War II wreck, the Stuttgart, demonstrated the potential effects of the Franken's oil leak into Dansk Bay. The German ship's sinking was one of the war's horrific but inevitable tragedies because it was carrying wounded soldiers. However, despite the fact that the Stuttgart was carrying casualties while anchored in Denise Harbor and was marked with a Red Cross, American bombers that attacked the port in October 1943 were unaware of the passenger ship's status, so the planes dropped their deadly loads on the ship. The Stuttgart then caught fire as a result of that assault, and the majority of those aboard perished in the ensuing blaze. The Stuttgart's charred remains were then dragged into the Baltic Sea from Denise Harbor. Together with the bodies of the men who had been killed in the bombing raid, she was sunk there. However, research conducted between 2009 and 2015 revealed the horrifying effects of the ship's downing, which would haunt subsequent generations. These studies revealed that nearly 500,000 square feet of the seabed had been contaminated by the oil that had leaked from the Stuttgart. Since then, this pollution has destroyed all living things in that region, including algae and creatures, and the spread of the contaminating oil has only grown over time. He really made a trip to fabulous Cayman to watch his previous boat vanish into the waters of the Caribbean. After 25 years, this is the first time I've seen the ship, and she's in pretty bad shape. In 2011, Gladstein stated to HuffPost that she had served divers all her life and would continue to do so. He continued, "That's got to be a lot better than getting melted down for razor blades." Although it is uncertain whether the Franken's oil can be similarly saved, the story of the Kittiwake may be encouraging. In addition, Hack emphasized the problem's urgency in an interview with the Maritime Herald in 2018, stating that we have limited time to act. It can't be more than a year, maybe even 10 years. Therefore, all we can do is hope that the Franken's deadly cargo is neutralized before it is too late. Thanks for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss a thing.